Hi, welcome to ThreatTraq Essentials. Every episode, we take a look at some basic cybersecurity lessons that we can learn from this week's ThreatTraq stories. I'm here with Bindu Sundaresan, who is on the show this week. Welcome, Bindu.
Thank you, Don.
Tell me first about the story that Stan Nurilov brought to us. That was about GitHub being exploited, someone's GitHub account being exploited. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so interesting story. A number of us use GitHub for storage, and this was, potentially a leak that was exposed, which had some information that is talked about as if it is non-sensitive, but there was a leak of information and exposure. And there was talk about, whether this was a legitimate exposure or not. Employees of that organization commented about the validity of the leak. So at the end of the day, when you are using GitHub, you want to make sure that you're not just using sort of a simple username and password. You have multi-factor authentication so that it adds another layer of control. And when you are using GitHub, especially private accounts, you don't want to post anything that is sensitive. And keep in mind, what you may not consider intellectual property or sensitive information may still have information that is useful to others. So what you're posting out there, you have to keep a watch and make sure that, you're not leaking unnecessary information. And it also brings about a topic around misinformation spreading. So if you ever hear about an exposure or a breach, keep in mind that there is a process about how we should communicate about it externally. So you as an employee, especially with all of us working remotely, you may not be able to get up and check with the person next to you saying, how should you go about this? There is the process, always reach out, to the crisis response team within your organization that will tell you how to communicate about this.
So, Bindu, you brought us a story about Sphinx Malware. Tell me what that is. Why is it so dangerous?
Yes, malware in general, is definitely one of those cybercrime commodities that are constantly being tweaked. So in this case, the Sphinx malware is basically been around for a while, but it is constantly sort of rising up. Given the current crisis, it's being tweaked to gain access to credentials, and it's being used to gain access specifically to banking credentials. And it starts off with a COVID, based phishing attempt that talks about giving you money and gathering information from you, and then exploits it, stays on your machine, and then eventually also ends up being a botnet. So, this is scary because, you see malware being out there and how it's constantly being reused and tweaked and modified to take care of sort of the current threat landscape and to be able to exploit and gain more and more information.
So how does somebody protect themselves from something like this?
So I think as an end user plus as an enterprise, you want to constantly make sure that you have the technology and the tools in place to be able to monitor for user behavior. And you as an end user should be aware of, these attachments that you open. Even if something has a legitimate subject line, it has a Word document that says, COVID funds, COVID stimulus check, any of those things. Typically, you will not be getting a Word document that is going to open and ask you that, do you want to enable macros and execute on it? That is malicious. So you shouldn't be opening any of these attachments that come from unknown senders, and when you see something like this that is asking you to go into another form and fill out information, typically it is malicious. You will not be getting a Word document where you click on it and it opens up a web page for you to put in your user ID and password, especially specific to banking. That will never happen. So it is malicious. In a legitimate attempt, it will not happen.
So George brought us a story about another form of malware called Anubis. Tell me about that.
Anubis malware is interesting. It is specifically targeted at Android devices. And you think about this malware, what it does is it is sort of keeping an eye on you as to make sure that when you're watching your phone, it's not going to do anything fishy. When you're not looking at your screen, that's when it's acting up. So this is almost like an upgrade where, the malware helps keep track of a user's screen behavior and manipulates the user's device into doing things when they're not watching.
So how do you keep yourself from getting this malware on your device?
So typically, any of these malware that spreads off, that initial attack vector is usually an email, an attachment that you open, a link that you click on, and when you download malicious apps that you may not be thinking are malicious because you're just going to the Play Store and downloading apps. Keep in mind that when you use your phone for these purposes, and you may not be able to immediately protect yourself against a malware, but you can limit the exposure of that malware on your device to sensitive data. So if you're using your Android device for banking applications, for investment applications, don't use that same phone and just go ahead and download games and download apps from App Store which are not protected, right? So it's important to treat your phone as how you would treat your work laptop.
Well, great. Thanks for all the great advice, Bindu. And all of you watching, if you want to keep up on all this great advice every week, be sure to like and subscribe below. And if you want to take a deeper dive into any of the stories, click on the playlist below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.